Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of Warfare. This movie is directed by Alex Garland, who previously directed Ex Machina, Annihilation, Civil War. This movie stars Will Poulter, Joseph Quinn, and Michael Gandolfini. Now, the plot of this movie is about a true story in 2006 about a platoon of soldiers that are holed up in a building in Iraq. Now, when I saw the trailer to this movie, I was like, wow, this looks intense. This looks a lot like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, or what the movie Civil War should have been. Show us, more of the soldiers and the battle and the conflict in that aspect. And I figured, okay, Alex Garland, he's done some good stuff. He's a good director. So I was intrigued to see what this movie was going to be about. I was intrigued to see the story, to see how he fleshes out these characters. And I didn't know who the cast was at all. I just saw these trailers, heard all these good reviews about it. So, having seen the movie, I can describe this movie in one word: intense. This is a lot like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, where things happen to men that have you questioning, what would I do in that situation? How would I react? What is going through their minds? And I think that's the goal of this movie, is to show what these men went through physically and mentally in this situation. Now, the cast in this movie was really surprising because it took a lot of young up-and-coming actors and, gave them a light to shine in. A lot of actors from things that were smaller or things that, they may be unknown for, and it gave them a time to shine. I really appreciated that about this movie. Now, I will say, aside from the action and violence, there's some downtime in this movie, and I feel that the first act is really slow because they want to build up the intensity. But also, I feel like in those quieter moments, Alex Garland's goal was to show how these men were working together as a platoon, as a unit. The dialogue they use, the code words, sit rep, and all the military jargon that they use to kind of show you, one, that these actors, Alex Garland, took their time to learn these aspects of the military, their dialogue, the way they communicate, and so forth. But also it builds the intensity because it's a little slow. And something is going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen. And when it does, this movie fires on all cylinders. The action doesn't let up. And you, just like these men in this situation, as an audience, are just going, what's going to happen next? What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Where are they going to go? What's going to happen? And so it gives you something to look forward to. I do have some issues with this movie, which I'll get to, but the young actors were given time to shine. This was Alex Garland and these actors, appreciation and tribute to the men of the military that survived this and those who didn't survive. And I feel like that was the basis of this movie, was to pay tribute to these men. Kind of like how Peter Berg pays tribute to the military in a lot of his movies, i.e. Lone Survivor. Or kind of how, Black Hawk Down did for that movie. Or 13 Hours, Soldiers of Benghazi. This movie was more a tribute. It's not going to be a linear story, which is what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a story about these men and their lives and how they, built up and how their lives led to this situation. It's not that. This is about a moment in time. So a movie like that is going to be less interesting than a collection of different men from different walks of life and their storylines, and then all culminating in one area. Now let me get with the acting. The acting, I'd say, was fine. I say that because there were a lot of actors, probably, 9 men in this group. We only really got to stick with probably 3 or 4 of them. And it was, the known actors. I will say Will Poulter was a standout because he's come such a long way from We're the Millers. And then when I saw, Maze Runner, and I saw that he was in that and it was a more serious role, I'm like, okay, this guy can do serious stuff. But, as his career has just built, he's popped up in all sorts of things that have me go, wow, this kid can act. He was in The Revenant and a couple other things I'm forgetting, but he can act. And then you have Joseph Quinn, who I've only known from Stranger Things, but since then he's done stuff. He was in Gladiator 2 as the older emperor. He's going to be in the Fantastic Four movie. And here also showed me, okay, this is someone to take notice of. Michael Gandolfini, who I'd only seen before in Many Saints of Newark as a young Tony Soprano, and most recently in Daredevil Reborn, or Daredevil Born Again. Yeah, Daredevil Born Again, that's it. Also, good jobs on their parts. This movie also features Cosmo Jarvis from most recently this show, Shogun. Now, I'll say Joseph Quinn and Cosmo Jarvis, their acting is a little... I'll say this. There are certain characters in this movie that have tragic things happen to them. And I feel like half of this movie are the soldiers, in the calm, quiet aspect, delivering their military jargon and communications and whatnot. And the other half, the majority of the movie, is when the action starts. When some soldiers get hurt, that's when it kind of focuses on the panic, the fear, the aspects of what they have to deal with mentally when stuff is going wrong and not going according to plan and people are hurt. And when that happens, you have two soldiers that get gravely injured. And so a lot of times they're just screaming and hollering and they're in pain and they're not in a comfortable situation. Now, I've always said that an actor can show off their range in a couple ways in movies. It'll have me go, wow, that's a good job. One of them is when they're sad and upset, and the other is when they're angry and when they're yelling. If you can maintain that character and make that believable, then you've sold me on your acting job. But here, Cosmo Jarvis and another character, they get injured. So a good bit of the movie is them in pain, is them struggling, is them screaming and yelling. And it's going to make the movie more intense. It's going to make it more emotional. But, because these characters weren't really fleshed out, I can't say that their acting job was great because all I did was holler in pain for most of it. You have to sell me on more than that. But like I said, the point of this movie was to honor and make a tribute of the soldiers in this event. And they do a fine job of, after the movie, showing you the real-life soldiers. They show some of the soldiers visiting the set, talking to Alex Garland and the actors, and going through the motions and stuff. And that part is really cool. So this movie was a tribute. As a standalone movie without a real storyline, I got to knock it for that. But because they set out a goal to pay tribute to these soldiers, and they succeeded in that, I'm going to give Warfare a B. This was a lot like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down. So if you're into military films, intense and violent military films, then this might be the one for you. So until next time, guys, see ya.